Now, welcome back to Talking with Ted about hiking. And in this series that we're currently doing, it is the best because we are talking about flora for hikers, okay? And we all know that plants rule and animals drool. You are gonna see these plants out there, some of them all over, because the elevation range for some of these plants is extreme, like from 1,000 feet to 8,000 or 9,000, 10,000 feet, same species. So you're going to see them, and we want you to get the most out of the hike by understanding and recognizing what you will see out there. You're not going to see a desert tortoise or a Gila monster probably, and maybe not a rattlesnake or a big horned sheep or whatever, but you will see the plants. Okay, so you get more out of it, enjoy it more. And we're going to focus this time on desert spring wildflowers. I have some samples to share with you. Now, oftentimes when people talk about wildflowers in Arizona in the spring, focusing on the desert, they have a favorite place, here, there, whatever. And I would recommend my personal place that I have found to be the most diverse, the most amazing with regard to wildflowers and all the variety that entails is the Superstition Wilderness. All right, now this area is huge. You can approach it from any direction. Expect, of course, on the weekends in the mild, cooler weather that the trailheads towards the west, First Water, Peralta, etc., are going to be kind of crowded. So you may need to go further up Apache Trail, off of Roosevelt Lake, even from the east or south. So, but that's the place that I have found to be the best with regard to wildflowers. Water is present generally, though spotty and seasonally. You're probably not going to be in there in June, so you don't really care if there's water there in June or not. But there are springs and puddles, especially this particular winter, 2023. We've had a lot of precipitation and the wildflowers are going like crazy. All right, so let's get started with the wildflowers. Now, the flora for hikers that we have focused on so far, and I will mention some of the plant families as we go along, because if you recognize the family, you are well on your way to knowing and identifying a particular species. So that's going to be helpful to you to recognize the family of the plants. Now, we've talked about oddballs that are just kind of quirky, so you don't have to worry about family. So weird. But sunflower family, we've covered. Cactus family. All right, now in this wildflower series, or session, it's not family specific, but it's location and seasonally specific. The other aspect about this that you have to bear in mind, some years, like last year, was not a particularly good year for spring desert wildflowers. This year is pretty great. And so you have to have realistic expectations, all right? Now, one of the trails that I went on, Miner's Loop, and I've done this going into First Water, etc. I'll be hiking in there, and I'm just like, where are all the wildflowers? And a hiker comes out, and I ask him, so, what do you think in bloom? Oh, no, not much. There was more stuff out there. It just depends on what you're looking for. People look for gold in the superstitions. It is everywhere, all over the ground in the form of poppies and brittle-bush, etc. So, there is gold to be had everywhere in the spring Sonoran Desert. Beautiful. Okay. So when you go through the superstitions, and this is an area that I kind of grew up in, came of age in the wilderness, high school, we did rock climbing, survival, orienteering. I led groups in there for many years. It was close to Phoenix where I was living at the time, and so I just hiked from one end to the other, 4-day solo backpacking trip, First Water to Roosevelt Lake, and so I really love the superstitions. I sometimes call them the stuperstitions because of the funny things people do there. But, so you're gonna find amazing, like I said, diversity, rocks, vast panoramas, up close, cliffs and lichens and flowers and all kinds of things. So slow down and observe what's out there. You will be richly rewarded. There are all kinds of maps and trails all over the place. So let's look at a little sampler, all right? And so I've got a picture there with a great big agave with weaver's needle in the background. Where are the flowers? They're there. And some years are like that. There's a little here, one here, a little one over there, and so forth. So you've got to look closely. Means you have to pause. Means you have to slow down and just take it in. Often, then in this next picture, we've got a bunch of wildflowers out there. And when you see one, you're gonna see more. There's gonna be like clusters and bunches, and these plants don't grow in isolation. In our agricultural world, you might have a field of wheat or corn or cotton or alfalfa or something. That's all that's out there. That is not the way it is out in nature, okay? There's all these things growing together. They work together. So when you see one, stop, and you will start discovering vast numbers of other things while you're there, okay? A lot of people in the plant guides, one of my favorites here, Ann Epple with her Plants of Arizona field guide. It's a good field guide because it actually is created and constructed in such a way that you could look at a flower and how many petals it has and so forth to get more likely to the one you're looking at. Of course, it only has about 10% of the plants of the state, so it's 90% that are not there, but it's about the best I have found. So oftentimes people think of color, and so we're gonna start with color. And the most common color of wildflower is yellow. Why is that? I was asked that question in a presentation I was doing, and I hadn't thought about that before or been asked that before, but I started thinking about it, and I think it probably has something to do with the range of pollinators. When the sunlight comes into the earth, the electromagnetic spectrum, it splits, and it goes first from UV down to microwave. And so you get different frequencies and wavelengths. And so you got blue coming, ultraviolet, blue coming off, and you'll get pollinators that tend to focus on that, like bumblebees. They can actually see ultraviolet light, and they tend to favor some of those colors of flowers, for example, in their pollination. And then you've got some that focus on the other end, you know, the reds, oranges, and stuff like that. Well, yellow is in the middle of that, and so everybody can take advantage of yellow, and that's probably involved with its being so widespread because it appeals to all pollinators, beetles and ants and bees and butterflies, etc. Okay, so everybody can handle probably yellow and get something out of it. That's my thinking. All right, so the first one we're gonna show you, and I've got some specimens in here, and I'm gonna test you on them later, I guess, on what we're looking at in the picture. So the first one that I've got there are poppies. Gold poppies, Mexican poppies are generally what you find most here, all right? The genus Escoltia, all right? So it is a member of the poppy family. Not everything that is called poppy, a common name, is a poppy, okay? Bear that in mind. And so desert, spring, below 4,000 feet generally, and usually you'll find them in extensive displays because when it's a good year, and they all go after it, okay? They're only about 1.5 inches wide, the flower, but there get to be so many of them and the bunches that they're outstanding when they do show up, okay? February to April generally, and they're quite common. The specimen I got today was right alongside the road, so you will often see roads with increased runoff along there having a greater display of flowers. Lupins, for example, poppies, and other things. Okay, so poppies, that's the first one you want to remember, okay? Poppy family. The next one I have there is evening primrose. This is the evening primrose family, the Onagraceae. The genus in this particular one is called Enothera, All right, 4 petals. It's a little bit different than most of these others. Again, February to May. The petals are notched, and as its name suggests, evening primrose. That means it's going to open up in the evening, the more diminished light times of day. In the morning, you'll see them, and then pretty soon, after the sun's on them, then they're going to close up, and they're going to wait for things to get more subdued in the light, okay? And often they're white or yellow, probably appealing to maybe some nighttime pollinators like moths, bats possibly, mostly probably the moths, appealing to that color, okay? Next, all right, we have a thing called golden corydalis in a very funny family called the bleeding heart family, okay? Fumariaceae. Don't you just love those Latin names? Love them. Now, this is a weird looking flower, especially even within that family, where it has a thing called a spur, which is a little projection at one end of the arrangement of the petals. Now, the first 2, poppies and evening primrose, are what you would call regular symmetry. It just looks like a ball, but these are bilaterally symmetrical, like a person, okay? And so that helps you look, when you look at a plant to decide what it is or try to figure out what it is, note those things. It's symmetry. Somebody brought in a plant the other day and I failed to observe 2 things about it: how the flowers were arranged and the aroma of the leaves, okay? So there are some, and you pick up one of those 2 of those characters, and that really helps you narrow and eliminate a lot of other possibilities, okay? So crush the leaves, take a whiff. Mint, carrot family, for example, are very aromatic and can help you figure out what it is. I'll have a sample of that in a moment, okay? So golden corydalis, the first 2, evening primrose, Enothera, the poppies, sunny hillsides. Okay, golden corydalis more often in the desert, especially along stream courses where there's a little higher amount of moisture available. Okay, so where these things grow is also going to be a clue to what it is and to help you identify it. Note those kind of things in your notes or in your head, or when you're taking a picture, bear that in mind. Okay, all right, some more yellow. Monkey flower, okay, don't you love that? Again, its symmetry is bilateral, all right? It's a member of the figwort family, like the snapdragon group, okay? And so it's got a thing called a stamen that is not fully functional, so it has kind of this funky kind of appearance to some of the stamens in there. But also occurs around moisture, more so. Sometimes they're very tiny. And let's see if I've got down, I don't know. There's probably a dozen or so species of monkey flowers. Some are big flowers, some are little flowers. But they'll have that characteristic monkey face, little fuzzy again in there. Bilaterally symmetrical, yellow. Okay. So around water, opposite leaves coming off of the stems. 1,000 feet, this is one of those examples, 9,000 feet. I was just hiking the New River Mountains, and there was a little puddle there, and at the edge of the puddle was monkey flower, little tiny ones. And you could go up to 8,000 or 9,000 feet in June, and there will be another species. And so, but you can once you recognize that flower and that shape, you won't miss it. Okay. Monkey flower. Okay, fiddleneck. Now, fiddleneck is another yellow one, very small flowers, bristly plant. The herbage has little white bristles on it, but the arrangement of the flowers are in a coil, like a scorpion's tail. And so sometimes it's called scorpion weed, or the inflorescence, the arrangement of flowers is called a scorpioid, okay? It's in the forget-me-not family. Don't you just love names like that in the plant world? Forget-me-not, bleeding heart, okay? Lovely. So desert hillsides mostly. The flowers are small, but you'll see a bunch of them together in this arrangement, and so that's a tip. Again, it's bristly, so that helps you. Most of the members of this family are bristly like that. Not spiny or thorny, but bristly, okay? All right, Now, some of the spring flowers are not herbs only, little bitty things. They're shrubs, they're woody. I will have an example of that too in a minute. So creosote, yellow flowers, sticky, resiny kind of leaves, divided leaves, white, fluffy, puffy little fruits that are on there the whole time along with the flowers. And the flowers will be in production. They're available to pollinators for many months. It kind of depends on the environment. So it's not just a spring flower. You can see them flower other times of the year as well. Okay, separate petals. They're not united together like in a tube. They have 5 petals on them, okay? Most of the time, members of this family have divided leaves, okay? So that, and this does too, so that will help you to remember. That's another clue to the family. Common characteristics, patterns are real important, okay? Another one, which is a member of that figwort family, okay, is shrubby, let's see, what's it called? Bush penstemon, okay? The genus is Cacalia. You won't see this one very often. Again, it's got that bilaterally symmetrical arrangement of the petals, and it's kind of like a mouth that's open with a little fuzzy thing inside again, that bearded tongue kind of appearance of some of the flower structures, okay? And it's on a shrub, bright flowers, about as big as the tip of your thumb, not very widespread, but you'll see it, kind of high desert, Sunset Point, upper Sonoran Desert, the Superstitions, white tanks, etc. Okay, so bush, penstemon. All right, last, and this, I think it's the last yellow one I have. Yes. Okay, so the last one is columbine. Now, I love columbine. We have most commonly yellow ones, and why do I like columbines? Because they are around wet places, and I love to hike where there's water. You know, you get thirsty in the desert, so that's nice to have. Okay, so member of the buttercup family, and if you look at the face of the flower, it's going to be radially, you know, symmetrical. Okay, not bilateral. But it has long spurs coming off of it. You cannot miss it. And oftentimes it's big and bushy. It could be 5-6 feet tall. Some of the other species, for example, the state flower of Colorado is blue and white color. We have one here in Arizona, also higher elevation, that's red. All right, but down here in the desert, what you're gonna find is the yellow one, stream courses. Aquilegia is the genus, columbine, the common name, buttercup family. Okay. All right, so that's yellow. We remember why yellow is so common, theoretically. All right, next we're going to go to white. Now, the first one I have there, you may remember from the sunflower family presentation, is this one called desert chicory, the genus Rafinescia. Don't you just love those Latin names? They roll off your tongue. I had a group in the library today talking about plants, and they hate scientific names. I'm sorry about that, but if you want to be clear on what you're talking about, you've got to not be so objectionable to them, because if you don't want to use them in speech, but you're going to look it up in a name in a book, that's what's always going to be there. Common names come and go, and they're in different places. They'll be, you know, mean different things, but the scientific name is, and also the family is critical, so you've got to get with it. It's okay, you can handle it. Okay, so the desert chicory is often just a single head. Remember that sunflower group, it's many flowers in there, but it's just one at the end of the stem, so you're not going to have a bunch like in the fiddleneck we talked about. It's many flowers in that scorpioid arrangement, okay? So this one, the desert chicory, is many flowers, but it looks like one in a head. Remember the sunflowers, okay? So it's just gonna be looking like it's just one thing sitting there by itself, okay? Next, okay, another woody plant is one called rock flower, and you kind of remember the first time you meet somebody. Okay, the first time I got acquainted with this plant was in the Superstitions, and it was just such an exciting thing to learn a new face, learn a new plant. Very fragrant. I just hiked in the New River Mountains, way up the top, 4,000 feet. Guess what was growing up there? Rock flower. So again, you will see these things in all kinds of places. So petals, it looks kind of like a wheel sticking out there, and you've got 5 petals, but they're not close together, so there's all this space in between. So it's kind of weird. Very tiny flowers, shrubby. It's kind of scraggly looking, but when it's in flower, you will not miss it. You'll know, because it's just not, because of the space in between the petals, it just doesn't look normal. You'll remember it. Okay. Rock flower. Okay, next is Jimson weed. Big, long, tubular, also called angel trumpet. Sometimes it's called thorn apple. Okay, Datura is the genus, and it is in the potato, tomato, tobacco family. Solanaceae, it's all in one family. Large flowers called angel trumpet because it's poisonous. Thorn apple, where the seeds are used for hallucinogenic purposes, and if you get it done wrong, it kills you. So the herbage smells to me like death. It just is rancid, okay? So again, aroma, touching, feeling. Some of these plants are sticky, they're resinous. I mentioned creosote, it's sticky and resin. You gotta touch things, smell things, and with plants to get what it is. You can't just figure it out like with a bird book. Oh, that bird 50 feet over there is this or that. It doesn't work with plants. You've got to get closer. Okay, so big, long, tubular flower. Often the petals in that family are united, unlike the rock flower family. So how the flowers are arranged in both of these, radial symmetry, okay? All right, next, prickle poppy, another white one. Radial symmetry. It's named prickle poppy because of all the spiny leaves. It's almost like a thistle. Large white flowers about big as your hand, hideous, weird orange sap. So how you know? Because you break off a piece and you look at it and see what the sap is. Sometimes plants with milky sap, like in the milkweeds we're going to talk about in a second, helps you. Now there are other plants, sow thistle, a sunflower family that has milky sap. Some of the cacti, mammillaria, have milky sap. So it's not like the only thing ever that has milky sap. But again, pattern, put it together. It's always a combination of characters, but with the flowers and the fruits being the most important with regard to most of the plants we see, because most of the plants we see are flowering plants. Okay? All right, now the next one that I want to mention is the milkweeds. The genus is Asclepias. Now, wide range of elevation, again, 2,000 to 8,000 feet. You'll see them when they're kind of white, they're kind of creamy, they're even kind of greenish, some reddish in them. So the color is variable. It's a very interesting pollination mechanism though, and that is, rather than individual pollen grains, the pollen is in a sac. And so when a pollinator comes in there, it hooks the way it approaches, and it grabs this whole pair of sacs of pollen, and it takes the whole batch to the next flower, and then that batch gets hung up in a groove and pollinates, and you'll get, you know, pods with these milkweeds, and the seeds are these little puffy things, and there's thousands of them in a single fruit, because one visit from a pollinator is like, does the whole thing. So it's pretty amazing, the different strategies and approaches that plants utilize to keep going. That's what it's about, is to make more of themselves. Okay. All right, the last, no, we got 2 more. One is called cream cups, okay? The genus, here's a really cool name, Platystemon, okay? Very cute little small flower, about as big as the tip of your thumb, but it has all these stamens in there, and so it is a member of the poppy family as well, like prickle poppy, okay? And it's kind of distinctive because the stamens are almost as big as far as taking up space in the flower as the petals are. So it's very evident, these stamens in there. Regular symmetry again, so about 1 foot tall, 6 petals or more. okay? So that's a little bit different. It's about 1 inch wide, March to May, so a little later flowering, okay? All right. Cream cups, all right, the last one is windflower. Anemone is the genus. Now this one is in the buttercup family, like columbine, okay? And it has many parts. Oftentimes these, what are considered more primitive plant families have many parts. Lots of stamens, lots of petals, or things that look like petals. And so this one was radially symmetrical again, and a little cone in the middle with all kinds of stamens on it, and all these little petals, they all look the same, like they could be tepals, you know, you remember? Like a cactus, they have the same color and shape, so they're not always called sepals or petals, they're called tepals. And so desert, about 1 foot tall maybe, and even up to chaparral possibly. And so you'll see these, you know, distinctive plants. Again, once you see them, they just will not look like something else. So pay attention to the pattern. Okay, the leaves are dissected, flowers February to April. Pretty widespread, like I said, 2,000 to 5,000 feet. Okay, that's white color. Blue and purple is next. Okay, so Phacelia is one we've got there with another example of a scorpioid inflorescence arrangement. These are purple, not yellow like in forget-me-nots, okay, with the fiddleneck. Okay, so there's probably 2 dozen species of Phacelia. It's about 2 feet tall, February to May. Actually, I got you on 38 species. So with some of these plants, you'll get Phacelia. You'll get, we're going to look at locoweed here in a second, astragalus, which is a locoweed. And there's 75 species of astragalus. You probably are not going to worry too much which one you have, because very minute characters that are complicated, and you have to have the tools and the understanding to make distinctions. And so once you've got a locoweed, you're probably going to be happy, or same with the Phacelia. Okay, so let's talk about locoweed. All right, so locoweed, divided leaves, member of the pea family. Oftentimes the fruits, the pods, remember pea family has pods, are inflated like a bag. The symmetry, all right, this is, I believe, the only plant group which is named for an animal. Papilio is butterflies, and so oftentimes these bluebonnets, lupins, and astragalus, they're in a, they kind of remind us somebody of butterflies, and so that's the group that they're put in, pea family. Divided leaves, about 6 inches tall. Oftentimes it's a cluster of flower heads coming off there with many flowers on each stalk, okay? All right, let's go up to then, I think I've got a picture of lupins in combination with covina grass, all right? And so both of them are blue. Lupins are poisonous. Covina grass is edible. I handed someone, I said, I just met someone on the trail, hey, these say these edible, what do you think? He said, I took it, he grabbed it, they are. Okay, he didn't, I don't even know which one he grabbed. But you got to be very careful and know exactly what you're eating before you eat it, all right? The other part about covina grass is that it has a bulb about 6 inches below the ground that is also edible. It's very difficult to get to the bulb though. You dig down in there, and by the time you dig down, the stem breaks off and you can't then find the bulb amongst all the rocks. So since the flowers are edible, I just eat the flowers. But that is a member of the lily family, the covina grass, the lupins, pea family. Whole different relationship. All right, next. Owl clover, which is a member of that figwort family, and they look like, which also is out, Indian paintbrush. Okay, and so the colorful part that you see in those two, especially owl clover here, which I've got this picture of, is not actually technically part of the flower. It's another bract, and they just have a bunch of them in there, and it's the colorful part, so that's what people think is the flower, but it's actually within those bracts that the reproductive parts of the flower are located. You don't get a lot of owl clover, very small plant, 3, 4, 5 inches. Sometimes it's out there just by itself, sometimes there's a bunch of them. So, but very rarely will you see a huge number of them. So you've got to look carefully, slow down, pay attention. All right, let's look at Cremeria, which is another woody plant, and it's commonly called range ratani. It used to be thought of to be in the pea family because of the superficial resemblance of the flowers like the butterfly group, but the fruit is a bristly pod, a little capsule almost, and it has these little barbs sticking out. It's very weird looking. Also, the flowers do not have nectar, they have oil. So there are bees that pollinate them just as a separate food source for the oil, so it's kind of strange. Silvery leaves, hardly any leaves. It's a little bit thorny, but it is one of those shrubs or plants that you're just kind of not going to notice it unless it's in flower, and you've got to pay attention. But once you spot it and it has that unique structure of the flower with those bristly little fruits on it, you'll remember it. Okay, range ratani. All right, so 2 more to go. One is a tree. Again, another woody plant. Desert willow has big tubular flowers. The member of the family is big Noniaceae. Don't you love that? The genus is Chilopsis. And it grows along stream courses in the desert. You'll have it up in higher elevations, Sedona, Prescott, so forth, out more in the open. But down the desert, it'll be pretty much restricted to stream channels. Willow-like, very wispy kind of stems, thin leaves. It's deciduous, long capsular fruits with wind-borne seeds in them. And but very lovely. And sometimes the flowers are more purplish, deep purple. Sometimes they almost lean towards white, so very light purple. But bilaterally symmetrical again. All right. And the last one is called 4 o'clock. All right. Mirabilis is the genus, and so it's a trailing one. And there's probably a dozen or so species of this. Little purple flowers, radially symmetrical, stamens sticking out of them, and all the petals are kind of ruffled a little bit around the margin, and the leaves are a little sticky, like a little resinous, okay? And some of these plants get to be big in this family, but again, the name 4 o'clock, it's like the evening primrose where it gets subdued light. That's when they open up. Heat of the day, sunny, they're gonna close up more so, okay? March to May is when that one flowers. All right, we're getting to the end. Red, pink, orange, okay? You ready? Penstemon. And there's a couple dozen species of penstemon. Some of them are tall, but long red tubular flowers. Again, it's part of that figwort family with the stamen inside that's sterile, and it has that funny fuzzy appearance on it, like a called bearded tongue. Imagine a beard on your tongue. I'm not going to stick my tongue out, so you could imagine that, okay? All right, so Scrophulariaceae is the family, Penstemon's genus. Opposite leaves, February to June. Again, it's widespread, 1,000 to 8,000 feet of elevation. So here I've got 36 species. So again, some are purple and some are trailing like vines. Some are tall, a little bit bushy. Almost. But again, the tubular flowers, what pollinates tubular flowers? Red. Hummingbirds. Okay, so that's what works well with them. Penstemon. Globe mallow. Okay, it's more of a coppery colored one, radially symmetrical. The thing to look for with this one is that there's a column of stamens in the middle that's all united. And think of the hibiscus, Hawaii state flower. That's the same family. Pattern, all right, is a column of stamens in the middle. This is very widespread. The leaves are very kind of roughish, granular looking along roadsides, very extensive floral displays. Can't miss it. Mallow, oftentimes called globe mallow. back to our sunflower, we have one called brown foot, and it has this reddish, pinkish kind of flower and a big bunch of them on the end of the stalk. And you look down toward the bottom of the stalk, you break off that stem and it's got brown fuzzy down there. Why it's called brown foot, okay? So you don't see, when you recognize the head from the sunflower family, you don't see very many with this color, so it'll kind of jump out at you that it is a member of the sunflower family. And with that brown foot at the bottom, you can't mistake it for something else. Okay, edible, tuberosa. All right, and it's a long red tubular like the penstemon, but this one is edible. Actually flowers from like September through May, so it's out there all the time. A very weak stemmed thing. Oftentimes this semi-shrub will grow in amongst other things to help it support itself. And so you've got to look around in there and see, and there's a lot of nectar in it. It actually tastes pretty decent for a wildflower. Okay, tuberosa is a genus. Justicia is one of the scientific names for it. People disagree on what it should be. Finally, our last reddish one is something called Arizona poppy, and it is not a poppy. Remember, I told you common names you can't necessarily determine, but it is radially symmetrical. You'll see the divided leaves there. This is more of a summer, hot weather flowerer. In the desert, I focused on the cooler weather ones, but this is one that's going to show up in the monsoon time. It looks like a poppy, but it is not, all right? So it's different fruits and that. It just has a superficial resemblance, but it's actually more closely related to creosote bush, okay? So it's got that open flower, reddish orange, very pretty, and then when you bicycle in the area, you'll get a flat tire because the goat head fruits are very nasty and thorny and dangerous. Finally, our odds and ends. I have two, shrubby buckwheat, which is a bush that has nice dome shape, and it has clusters of flowers, pinkish on there, just hundreds or thousands of them. And the bees and butterflies will be pollinating all over it. And so you'll just recognize it by that huge display of all those clusters of flowers at the top, okay? So the family is called Polygonaceae, okay? So it's the genus of the specific group is Eriogonum, shrubby buckwheat. There are lots of other buckwheats, different species that aren't shrubby, but this one is kind of distinct, okay? And our last one is one called phlox, widespread, 2,000 to 5,000 feet, about a dozen species in Arizona, but it's got that nice, very perfect, radially symmetrical flower with the 5 petals, and it's got a yellow throat down in the middle down in there, okay? White flower, rocky slopes, okay? Stems are weak, so it needs help going up under other things to help it to stay upright. All right, are you ready for the specimens? Quickly, to test you on what we've looked at so far. Now, okay, what is that? Huh? Yes, what does that look like? Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4 petals, lots of stamens sticking up in the middle, radially symmetrical, very highly dissected leaves, poppies, okay, golden poppies, okay, going alongside the road. All right, now this one, yellowish, remember yellow being very common, scorpioid, bristly, okay, the bristles are all over the whole thing, simple leaves, alternate leaves, fiddleneck, okay, forget-me-not, the borage family, okay, very good. Made a mess. Okay, more on the yellow side. Here we go. What have we got this time? Now remember, from our sunflower family group, all right, head, remember the filaries at the bottom, okay, lots of flowers arranged to look like one. This one has disc and strap-shaped flowers. Silvery vegetation, leaves. And in this one, you'll get that kind of roundish dome of leaves, and then the flower stalks go high up above that, okay? Brittle bush, it's brittle, it's a bush. Common names, even though they're not always that accurate, they are often rather descriptive. And so you can use them to help you figure out what something is. So the name will illustrate that or highlight that. Okay. Now we have a woody plant. Okay. Tubular flowers, simple leaves, alternate leaves, small tree. Okay. Tobacco family, good guess. Tubular, radially symmetrical, tree tobacco, Nicotiana glauca. Glauca means that these leaves have kind of a glaucous coating on them, a little grayish there, whitish oftentimes. Okay, tree tobacco. Okay, are we out of yellow? What do we got now? Okay, we have this one, I mentioned this one. Remember the sunflower family? Remember that with all the strap shape? The desert chicory. Look at the back side there with the reddish. Okay, single flower up, or a group of flowers up at the head of the stalk. Big leaves, kind of divided, coarsely tubed. Okay, about a foot or two tall. Desert chicory. Sunflower family. Okay, how you doing so far? Let's look at this one. Radially symmetrical. Oh, I can't hold it. Okay. Globe mallow. Sphaerosia is a genus. Remember I mentioned that coarse leaves, alternate leaves. Okay. Globe mallow. We're almost done. Okay. Fall asleep on me out there. All right, so this one is kind of funny because it's so tiny. The flowers are on there. The fruits are on there. They occur together. You need both for identification. Rather fragrant, one of the mustards. Often with these tiny little fruits, it's called peppergrass, the genus Lepidium. All right, and there's several different species, and you can see the tiny little capsules on there. Those are the fruits. Fruits are not always fleshy and squishy like peaches. They are sometimes dry like peanuts. Okay, so mustard family, huge family. Some of the first flowers to come out in the spring, especially in the desert, but there'll be high elevation things too. All right, remember this one? Remember the coiled inflorescence? All right, it's a little fuzzy. Waterleaf is a family. Phacelia is a genus. Purple as opposed to the yellow fiddle nut. Okay. How you doing? All right, so now remember with the pea family, okay, remember it's got that butterfly face, okay, divided leaf. Okay, that's very common in the pea family. So it's a lupin, bluebonnet, Texas state flower, lots of species. Often you're going to find them more on the roadside. The thing that's really cool about pea family, mesquite trees and palo verdes and the whole bit, loco weeds, they actually leave the environment more nutritious than when they found it because they have the ability to fix nitrogen, which is most of what our atmosphere is, with bacteria to actually leave the soil more nutrient rich, which is why you sometimes want to plant legumes like peanuts or peas with your other things because they'll actually make the soil more nutritious for your other plants. Nitrogen is what plants need to grow, put on biomass. Good thing it's so much in the atmosphere. But not all the plants can do, or most can't do that. Okay, this one's really cool. Read the book, Born to Run, and you will find this plant featured prominently. Okay, square stems, opposite leaves, very aromatic, clusters of flowers, purple, chia, okay? Make tea, they would make a tea, a drink with it, and that would energize them to run, oh, I don't know, 100 miles. Ultra runners, Tara Umara down there in Mexico. Chia is really cool. You don't see that all the time. All right, last one. Okay, what did I say? They say it's edible. What do you think? I know you can do it. I eat what I teach. Okay? Eat your heart out, animal lovers. You ain't gonna do that with no animal presentation, are you? No. All right, I made a mess, but Covina grass, and it's edible, and there's tons more out there. Start small, build one family, one group, recognize patterns of characteristics, and you will enjoy your next hike much more. We'll see you then. Thanks.